Woes chat. Before I get started on today's topic, I just want to emphasize the fact that this will be my first video that I'm not recording on Instagram, so it's going to be a continuous feed. I don't get to like stop and then re-say what I said, or like say what I want to say more articulately. So you just finna get the raw, like no edit, me going off, you know. I have a little paper that has like the poll results, things I just don't want to forget on there, so I may like reference that, you know. I don't want y'all to think I usually come up with stuff off the top of my head, but it's not always like that. So to get to the poll, I really didn't expect a huge minority as far as like people who've experienced this behavior. I didn't expect it. I already kind of anticipated the fact that the numbers were going to be lower, but the fact that there are numbers at all says exactly what I intended this poll to kind of mean. So some people are not going to agree with me on this, and y'all know that I really don't care. I'm still going to say what I need to say because I feel like it's important to be said. So this poll, I was inspired by a client. And a client that I had not too long ago. She attended one of the best high schools in the city of Chicago. And she was an athlete. She played basketball. And when I would talk to her, I would get a lot of feedback about how her life a lot of the time was based around her basketball career. So she spent a lot of time with her teammates, a lot of time with her coach. And when we started to dig, we ended up finding out that a lot of her trauma is from her basketball experience. So she would pretty much tell me that her coach would say pretty inappropriate, demeaning and degrading comments. Now, of course, this is somebody who suffers from a mental illness and who suffers from an eating disorder. And her coach was aware of this. So, like, they would be at dinner and her coach would make comments like, oh, well, you can have such and such's plate because she's not going to eat it anyway. Something that can be very detrimental to somebody who already is suffering from a disorder. And knowing she would use the fact that she knew about her treatment history for her mental illness against her, making smart comments in front of other people, just really inappropriate behavior. And what I want to emphasize is not that the girl, because that's something that I seem to get a lot of, is, oh, these kids are soft. It's not that she couldn't take the constructive criticism. It's when it became personal. And that's my issue, is when I realized that, like, you taking this off the court and you're making her have a very uncomfortable experience. I was like, this is an issue. So when she told me that story, I kind of realized that there must be other people out there who have a similar experience. And even if you weren't the target, as my poll kind of proved, you witnessed the shit. You saw how coaches spoke to other players or treated other players. And you were able to recognize that that might have crossed the line. And so I really want to talk about this because I feel like it's something we don't talk about. We don't address it, and it shouldn't continuously be swept under the rug. So I just feel like a lot of y'all are gonna make this about like, oh, well, no, that's tough love. And the thing is, where do we draw the line? Where does it go from being tough love to degrading? Because I completely get it. You want to raise kids to understand the game of something, right? And you want them to be able to take constructive criticism. But again, when do we cross the line of it being constructive criticism and you breaking somebody down? Because where my client was at the time is that she had been broken down to the point where she didn't even enjoy the game no more. She didn't even enjoy the activity. And if we're stealing that joy that they're there for in the first place, then what are we really doing? So that was something that I had a big issue with, because by the time she got out of high school, she wasn't thinking about playing college ball. She was too mentally and emotionally exhausted from all of the interactions she had endured in order to even want to do that. She was like, I'm done, I'm tapping out. And she was good. She could have played college ball. So as far as the poll, I asked, the majority of you all definitely had black coaches, okay? That was a given. I mean, because most of the people who participate in my polls are from Chicago, from the South Side. We grew up with, a lot of black coaches, which leads me to another point. So how qualified are some of these coaches anyway? Because you already know that in some schools, they gonna take whoever gonna volunteer, they gonna allow you to coach. Period, point blank. So are you really skilled in this area to be doing this, for one? The second poll was pretty much, if you had an overall good experience. So most people said, yeah, they had a really good experience, fine, whatever. The third one was about the inappropriate comments. And the fact that, again, because I even have people acknowledging the fact that they were either the target of it or they saw it, it says enough. Because the thing is, this shouldn't be happening. And what I typically see a lot of is y'all feel like because we grew up a certain way that there is no other way, or that it's the right way or it's the only way. And that's not the case. Like, we are at a place and in a generation where we are evolving and trying to become more efficient. And so just because something worked for you, and that's something else I hate, because by whose definition? How people say, I got, they like to use the whoopings. I got spankings when I was younger and I turned out just fine. So people are kind of using the same narrative, like, I did, I was treated this way and I turned out just fine. But did you really turn out just fine? Or do you suffer from not being able to express your emotions because for most of your life somebody told you to shut up and stop crying, or to stop expressing yourself? And now you do that with other people and everybody sees it. So, don't come with, I just turned out just fine, because most of y'all motherfuckers that say that did not turn out fine, okay? So let's just be clear on that. The example that I want to set is, let's say you out in public and you see a mom cursing at her child. Cursing at the children. I'm sure most of you all have been in that situation, and a part of you kind of cringes. If you got some sense, you she really shouldn't be talking to them kids like that. That's not okay. But yet we don't do the same thing when we see coaches hollering, cursing at. I'm not just saying, go sit your ass down. I'm talking about, are you fucking dumb? Shit like that. Because that's the language that I have a problem with. Is you can critique, because at the end of the day, this is a child. You can critique a child without insulting them and making them feel less than, or making them feel worthless. Because what I saw in my client is the fact that she spent her prime years devoted to trying to win this ladies, because this is a woman. I haven't even touched on the male coaches. She spent her prime time years devoting her time to winning this lady's approval. Not trying to be the best player she could be, but yeah, she did, but at the expense of trying to win that person's approval, not to see how well she could end up performing. And that's what I have an issue with. So the next one was about pretty much feeling embarrassed. I expected the numbers to be lower because, as far as if it happened to you, because a lot of people will be like, nah, I was good, I was the best one. But then when it comes to happening to somebody else, now you got something that you want to say. And so the other question that I brought up was about the cursing. And I don't really see a problem with cursing in front of teenage kids, because I've cursed with clients before. It depends on context and how you do it. Again, are they cursing at these kids? Because that's not okay. And you can say, oh, well, that's why somebody was in my DMs earlier saying like, oh, well, that's why, our kids grow up soft. I'm not going to buy into the whole soft narrative. What I see happening is the fact that, and this isn't just them, this is a lot of the black community, we are not being taught how to properly handle our emotions or express our emotions, I should say. So, of course, if somebody is upset, they are going to, and you've never taught them how to properly express their emotions, they're going to act out. And I see the same thing with these coaches. A lot of these male coaches are men who don't know how to control or express their frustration and their anger. And that's why they come out degrading, humiliating the players. Because they don't know how to deal with that shit themselves. And so now they projecting it onto these kids. I had somebody in my DMs tell me that one of his coaches told a boy that his mother should have swallowed him. Why would you say that to a teenager? Like, I understand at the time it was probably real funny, but like, why would you ever think that is appropriate to say to somebody else's child? Like, it's little shit like that when we let it go, when we laugh about it and shit. But at the end of the day, it's really not okay. So I think like my main goal is to just tell everybody we need to encourage things to be a little differently. Like, these kids are already in such a critical point. That's why I said grammar school to high school, because that is really when you are learning who you are, what you like, what you don't like, and you're building critical parts of you. You're building your self-esteem and your confidence. And these coaches, these dance teachers, that's why I include them, because I grew up dancing. And I grew up playing sports too. These people, they have the ability and the position to speak life into these kids, to make them want to be better. But instead, you want to tear them down. And that's what I want to work against. This is a very critical age where they need to know how amazing they are and all the great things that they could accomplish in the future, and not be told how they suck and make them feel worthless and like they like dirt. That's pretty much all I'm saying. I'm all for discipline. Baby, I grew up in the era of, I used to run stairs. I used to run suicides. One person fuck up, everybody getting it. Like, I grew up in that. So I have no problem with administering consequences within reason to prove a point, or pretty much training up a team so that they have thick skin and they can go out and they can handle themselves. I don't see an issue with that. Like I said, my issue is when the line is crossed as far as how you're communicating these things. Because something that somebody else brought up, which I think is a great point, is the fact that everybody doesn't learn the same. So while one child may respond well to you yelling at them and getting in their face, another child is going to shut down because of that, and you're not going to reach them or get your point across. So that's all I'm saying, is not only do you need to cater your approach to the kids, but listen to them. Like, I think that's the big issue, is y'all feel like people in that age bracket, or just people seem to think that kids in general do not deserve just basic respect. And some of the comments that I've heard people saying, it shows that you don't fucking respect them. Period, point blank. So I also want to congratulate and give kudos to the parents who've stepped in when they see certain shit like this. Because again, certain things, okay, you need a little bit of tough love. But other things are crossing the line. And so as a parent, you are your child's protector. And you have to ensure that they are, to the best of your abilities, that they are being treated with respect by all types of adults. And if that means you having to pull them because you feel like, their coach doesn't respect them, then so be it. But you have to take the initiative. You can't just let somebody sit there and talk to your kids all type of way. And you can say, oh, well, that's why, they soft. like I said, there is a fine line. I grew up knowing that my coaches, my dance teachers, they was not going to play with my ass. If I fucked up, I was going to be sitting down. I knew that. I was very clear about that. But they did that and they relayed that message to me without making me feel less than, without tearing down my spirit. And that's my thing, is we have to build these kids up and make them know that there is more out there for them, and not break them down to feel like they ain't shit. Because it's enough people walking around this earth who feel like they ain't shit. And we got to put an end to that shit. And another thing I found really interesting is, so people were able to say yes, yes, that they had either been the brunt of, you know, being humiliated or degraded, or they saw somebody else. But then when I asked, would you have considered that person to be emotionally or verbally abusive, they said no. And I think a big part of that is because, again, y'all be like, and I not only y'all, but like a lot of people are just scared of the word abuse, and they shy away from using it unless it's something they deem very, very high on their abuse list. But as I indicated in another poll, it doesn't have to be that big black ugly word that y'all don't want to use unless something drastic has happened. Because humiliating somebody, degrading them, that's all verbally and emotionally abusive behavior. Sorry, that it just is. So again, you can say, well, I would just remember an instance or so you might not want to give that person that label, which I can understand. However, let's call a spade a spade. So I really encourage us to figure out, because a lot of y'all are in these roles now. I've coached. I know a lot of other people that have coached, that are coaching, and I just want you to take the responsibility like serious, that these kids, they look up to you, and they need you to speak life into them, and they need you to give them just as much praise as you do like tough love. They need both you need both to function. You can't get all this tough love, and the moment you do something right, the coach is quiet. Because then what is that going to show you? So equal praise, equal tough love, and just find the middle ground in making sure that you aren't unintentionally tearing down somebody else's child.